For a game as old as TF2, it's not surprising that people talk about the balance of it pretty much all the time. When I started playing back in 2012, YouTubers then were talking about the balance of the game, as well as the people playing it. And the likes of the lock and load were considered crutch weapons and whatnot. And that's a word that doesn't really get used much anymore nowadays, huh? Calling things crutches. But anyway, one discussion as far as the balance of TF2 goes that really has flown under the radar for a long time, despite being a part of the game basically forever, is that of demos grenades, or pipes, or if you're weird and European, I guess you can call them pills as well. But yeah, any variant of them, with I suppose the exception of the loose cannon, are really like broken in ways that I'll explain the specifics of. But for starters, what is the actual issue with pipes? And it's something that Stickies had as well years ago that has since been changed. And it's the fact that the fall off of the projectile is relative to the projectile itself rather than the person shooting it. As in, you shoot a rocket across the map and you get a direct hit on someone, not with the direct hit, but with stock, and you're going to do 48 damage. Because the rocket, which has 90 base damage, is going to be doing less damage at that range because you shot it from further away. But if you shot that same rocket, hit a direct much closer, you might be doing 100 damage. So the amount of damage that you are dealing is subject to damage fall off with how far away you are. Simple stuff there. And the same applies to stickies, right? There's damage fall off as far as how far away from you the target is, as well as how far away the target is from the sticky. So on a mid fight, if you hit someone with a stick, then you could be doing something in the ballpark of like 40 damage. But if you really beam them with it and like hit them right on target, then it could be doing upward of like 60 damage. But still subject to the fall off. Oh shoot. Is the health bug? Damn, I really thought whatever. I'm not going to restart the recording. I guess I just need to do that every time, unfortunately. Okay, whatever. This is not the case with some other weapons in TF2. There are weapons that have reverse damage fall off, such as the Crusader's crossbow, which actually does more damage the further away you are. But it's not really much of an issue because it's a crossbow on the medic. So like you're not really, there aren't a bunch of medics spamming crossbow. And if there were a bunch of medics all the time, the game would overall be better, maybe. At least in pubs. But are there other examples of reverse fall off I can think of? Not really. But the real problematic elements tends to be weapons without damage fall off. Because the big class in general that stands out there is sniper. Just very one-sided fights, because if a sniper outranges you, their damage potential is not any lower at all. But your damage potential against them might even reach just 0. So, yeah, can be very unsatisfying class to fight, and a very one-sided way to fight people as a result. And if you're getting what I'm hinting at here, pipes don't have damage fall off, meaning a direct hit pipe will do 100 damage. Back in the days before random damage spread was disabled, it used to do anywhere in the ballpark of like, I don't actually know the exact number. Could it do like as little as 85? Was it plus or minus 15%, or was it like a lower percentage? Point being, used to be a little variable, but nowadays it's just 100 damage. Every single time you connect a pipe on someone, it does 100 damage. And that includes at range. And there's some pretty far range to pipes. Not to mention that 100 damage is a lot, and that's kind of like the standard hard-hitting weapon kind of damage amount. As in your closer range rockets, your closer range stickies, your meat shots with the scatter gun. Shotgun's going to do a little less. I think it ramps up to like 90 something. I don't know. But still in that ballpark. So being able to do that from any range is pretty ridiculous. Now, granted, pipes are relatively slow, I would say. They don't splash. They only have rollers. So they are easy-ish to dodge in some circumstances, but not all circumstances. And also, like, pipes will hit. You will get piped at some point eventually. I hope that's not something that gets... I'm going to be saying getting piped a lot, I think. Just don't be weird. So, yeah, I mean, it's something that's going to happen. Obviously, when you are playing demo, hopefully, you are hitting some pipes. And not all of those are going to be on, like, really close range players. Sometimes you're just going to be spamming, and your spam hits someone, right? Whether they're trying to get through a choke point, or just kind of in the course of the game. Stuff happens. And hitting a pipe is really, really big. Because, and let's get into some concrete examples here. So I know I always talk about mid-fights, and that's for good reason. It's just because it's such a standard position that you see so frequently that it happens all over, or it happens multiple times per game, so you see a lot of different things. That's just a good standard to approach a example with. But anyway, on a mid-fight, very common thing that teams will do is bomb off of damage. So if any of their spam classes, either soldier or the demo, what is going on with this demo? That is weird. If either soldier or the demo gets particular damage on an important target, then that might encourage the team to bomb their soldiers and walk forward. This can often be the case of hitting multiple stickies on a player. It could be just really good rocket spam. Like, I've gotten good damage on this demo early in this mid. Actually just died to spam, so we can probably play it slow without bombing. But you can hit like multiple stickies to do the same amount of damage that one pipe will from across the map, which is crazy that one projectile can just do 100 damage fully across the map. Obviously, there's like some range limitations to it, but it's still pretty long range for a pipe relative to other weapons where, yes, you're going to have longer range with a charged sticky than you would with a pipe, and it's probably easier to connect some damage, but hitting a pipe across the map is going to be doing way more damage than a comparable ranged rocket, for example. You are giving up some consistency in doing so because, again, you don't have the splash damage, but it's still so huge and can just be fight defining, if not fight winning. Just piping a med in a team fight almost can win your team the team fight in many cases. The reason being, A, they're either too far forward and just completely caught. I should have just wiped the team there. I also should have gone for the wall bug there. Interesting. Whatever. A, either the med is kind of out of position in a place where they can't get to safety by the time your soldiers bomb, in which case you bomb and then kill the med very easily because it's a 50 HP med. And like the balance of meds getting bombed, meds have plenty of defensive counterplay in just hitting serfs and dodging enough damage to where they live. Because there's a reasonable enough expectation for your scouts to deal with the soldiers that they're really only getting a handful of rockets off at worst. Like, in many cases, if the bomb gets denied well, it's only going to be like 1 or 2 rockets. But med hitting a serf, you should be expecting to take maybe 80 or 90 damage to surf away to safety. And if you're 50 HP, that is obviously no longer a possibility, and you will just die. So, yeah, there is definitely on the defensive counterplay, I should say, that a medic has against a bomber just doesn't really exist when they're at 50 HP. They're basically a free kill. The only ways you have to survive is to already be somewhere safe where you were difficult to bomb. So if you are committed in a team fight, which is a pretty normal thing for a med to be doing, and you just happen to catch a pipe and the other team is good enough at the game to capitalize on that momentary advantage quickly enough, then yeah, you just lose your med because he caught a pipe. Now, there are, of course, going to be instances where your med just shouldn't have caught the pipe. Maybe it was reactable, dodgeable. Maybe they weren't paying enough attention. Obviously, that's always going to be an element of things. But again, your med is going to get piped sometimes. That's just going to happen. And it's extremely powerful when it does. And sometimes it can feel kind of random because a lot of the time it is just spam. Right. And in the other cases where the med in this mid fight or team fight is not so committed that they're just can be bombed for an immediate kill or just spammed out for a kill, which I didn't mention either. In those cases, well, you're still looking at a situation in which this med has to play extremely passively and oftentimes just leave outright to go get a health pack. And in those cases, that's very exploitable because guess what? A team with a medic who just left the point doesn't have as fast and easy access to heals as a team with a more committed medic would. So you can have, again, a very temporary but notable advantage in that fight. So again, another case of just what can seem like a random pipe, kind of just winning a fight. And this is a balance thing that doesn't really get brought up that often. It's just how consequential pipes can be to a team fight environment. Being able to do 100 damage from such range. And sometimes, again, I keep bringing up how it can just feel random sometimes. Obviously, like I say this as someone who plays demo, has to fight against demos basically all the time, early on a mid fight or when we're trading spam and things like that. I consider myself someone who is good at dodging pipes, right? And in fact, one of the main reasons I don't really take much issue with the lock and load, for example, is because I think I'm generally pretty good at paying attention to and avoiding lock and load spam. Not perfect, but good enough that like it really doesn't bother me when the opposing demo is on it. However, I still catch pipes. I mean, it's just going to happen. Sometimes you walk through a door and there just happened to be a pre-fired pipe that hits you. And in cases like that, I mean, it's not always going to be as consequential as others, but still, I mean, it's a big deal to take 100 damage just like that. So yeah, pipes can feel kind of random. You're just going to get hit with them sometimes. And that is obviously going to be very impactful when there's no damage fall off to them and they're doing a full 100 damage, which is more damage than many classes would like be capable of doing at that range, if not kind of all of them, with the exception of like a sniper, or like with the assistance of mini crits or something like that, or full crits. Right. And this is something that gets exacerbated with the discussion about the lock and load. This is a kind of topical discussion because there seems to be a sort of renewed second wave of people wanting to ban the lock and load in North America. It has already, it's been banned in Europe for some time. It has actually been banned in Highlander in North America for some time now. But 6 has still been allowed, but with this past invite season, more of the invite demos have just been running it consistently. And there's very good reason for that. And the reason is those long range pipes just win fights. I mean, there is more to be said from a specific metagame perspective about how it enables demo to play specifically. Because again, demo is a class that usually needs to commit themselves somewhat to danger in order to do adequate damage. And why am I still in? I should have jumped out. Yeah, that got me killed. Yeah, demo's usually a class that needs to commit themselves to some form of danger in order to deal adequate damage. So there's trade-off to be made there. The lock and load certainly enables a more passive playstyle overall while still having some strong damage output. But I think the main issue with the lock and load is not so much that it is a faster firing or faster moving pipe that has a bit longer range, but that it's a pipe. Because again, those ranged pipes can feel quite random at times, and they just really, I mean, it's not balanced at all. And I say this as a demo main, right? In the context of an organized setting of TF2, like pipes, especially at range, are just fight defining and huge. And again, it's not something people really talk about when people were complaining about balance regarding pipes, it was usually the old lock and load, which had a damage bonus, or it was the Iron Bomber having a slightly larger hitbox than stock, things like that. When, again, I mean, all of those are accessory issues, I'm sure, towards those weapons being too good or not. But again, they're only actually relevant because, well, not in the case of lock and load damage bonus, but especially in the case of like the longer range and faster projectile, those really only become issues in the context of a pipe just being so strong and so broken, right? It doesn't, I promise you that if the Iron Bomber did comparable damage to a sticky at range, then you would not have any scout players complaining about the size of the hitbox, like, at all. And likewise, if the lock and load had damage fall off, then people would not be complaining about it at all. And in fact, people would probably think it's bad, because part of the main benefit of the lock and load compared to the other options, namely Iron Bomber or stock, is that it is so much better at range. And in fact, if you were in a close range engagement where the actual damage starts to ramp up a bit, you'd probably still just be better off using stickies. Right. Anything else to talk about the topic? I think that was mostly it. Kind of a discussion on pipes in general and how the fact that they stand out as one of the few weapons in the game that don't have damage fall off really differentiates them as particularly broken in a competitive setting, just because you can apply so much damage that it can just straight up win a fight, whether it be connecting a really crucial pipe through a choke point, or just happening to hit a really valuable target, will change the tide of a fight, absolutely. And yeah, it's the effort to reward ratio is maybe a little bit off with pipes, which of course like aren't the easiest things to hit. They're harder to hit than rockets, for example, but still, I mean, you can spam choke points and do a better job of hitting people. It's not impossible to hit pipes. So yeah, they just can be very, very broken in a way that, again, people don't really talk about when they talk about balance. It's, you assume that all the stock weapons are perfectly balanced, right? But even stock grenade launcher sticks out as a particularly strong and potentially broken and potentially unfair weapon. Which also is ironic, because people tend to complain about sticky spam when the topic of like demo being such a strong damage dealing class comes up. But yeah, pipes absolutely stick out as not necessarily more effective than stickies by any means, but those times where it is very effective are in ways that just aren't that fair. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you haven't, because I told you so. And yeah, is this a discussion you guys have heard before? Because I don't think so. Yeah, people tend to only talk about those cross map pipes kind of just being broken in a more competitive context. But anyway, that's all from me. Hope you guys enjoyed, and see you all next time.